She said that during cross-examination yesterday, he was evasive and often relied on saying, I don't remember, when being pressed with some questions.
So the prosecution is trying to put young Philly in prison, and Australia has gave their closing arguments and described young Philly as an entitled man with a moderate degree of fame who was sexually violent towards an impressionable young woman. She meant nothing to him, is what she told the Australian court. What could have and should have been consensual sex quickly escalated into a sexual, violent and non-consensual nightmare. Clark said that one night stands were not illegal. The problem is, however, you run the risk of not knowing what a person's sexual boundaries and limitations or no-go zones are, which we are saying has occurred in this case. They're really doubling down now on their closing arguments on the time. The time between young Philly meeting her and him doing things to her, even if it was love bites. They're saying, when you consider the little time he spent with her before he started biting, slapping and strangling her, the state says he simply did not care. Clark said it did not matter what she was wearing or how famous or important or entitled young Philly perceived himself to be. Everyone has the right to say no. And she certainly did not want to engage in these sexual acts with him that involved violence and brutality. Clark cast the woman as an open and honest witness. And this is an angle that could be played on where things go wrong for young Philly really quickly. Now, whatever sexual deviancy or things he's into, it's mainly about a jury in Australia that are from that country looking at a girl that met him on the same night. Bearing in mind, someone in the jury, a woman, might have met their husband and maybe made him wait weeks or months or whatever. They didn't sleep with him the first night they met him at all. Maybe young Philly thought it was completely consensual and they was into it, but this is the problem. You're in Australia, they might not see it like that or see it as fun. They'd see that that looks like abuse. It is an overshadowing part of this trial that they may not look past because it's a man in their country and an Australian victim. And we have seen young Philly defend himself on this. In England, we call it a love bite, is what young Philly told the court, and there was kissing in between. I would give her a love bite and then I would kiss her. Young Philly said to the witness box, I don't recall any blood. The prosecutors clapped back at young Philly, saying he'd been invasive, unresponsive and tried to hide behind the term love bite as a means of explaining the injuries that the complainant allegedly suffered. The prosecution said young Philly has an answer for everything and would not agree to anything that would make him look bad. The jury was reminded, remember, young Philly and his bodyguard demanded the woman hand over her phone before the sexual incident began in a hotel room. What they're actually doing quite well, the people prosecuting young Philly, is they're doing a good job at putting things in the jury's head. Like, why would they take her phone off her? Obviously, with celebrity culture and after parties, this is normal. But the jury, are they going to understand that? Of course, young Philly's lawyer has a lot to say himself. His defense lawyer told the court in his closing argument that the question facing the jury is whether his client violently raped and strangled the young woman. The question is whether the violence or sexual acts occurred as she said they did. It is common ground they had sex in a hotel room, he said. This is not the court of morals. You are not here to say whether you agree or disagree about how this young woman was treated by young Philly. He argued that when people are in the moment, they don't ask whether sexual activity is consensual frame by frame. The notion of power imbalance, and he didn't ask questions about sexual boundaries, or he somehow had the responsibility of asking her before each sexual act in the bedroom, is nonsense, he said. It applies both ways. There was an age difference of 9 years, but she was an adult. He's trying to get across that young Philly in the heat of the moment, or anyone during intercourse when they give these love bites, they're not going to ask, hey, can I do this? Sometimes it just happens as they're doing it. But the question obviously would be, did she ask him to stop or get off, and he just carried on? And his lawyer is saying one thing that is perfectly clear is she was an enthusiastic and willing participant when the sex had started. The defense argued the medical evidence shown in court was unable to establish that young Philly either assaulted or strangled the woman. He said the state and the police also failed to gather critical evidence or interview key witnesses who spoke to the women after the alleged rape. We say the woman's evidence is riddled with inconsistencies and outright lies, he said. After everything he has done to her in that room, young Philly rings for room service to ask for a burger, and she asked for chips to go. A request made by her to him when minutes earlier he slapped, choked and awed her, and she said, can I have chips to go? This is what her narrative is. That request is what you might think is uttered deplorable. We've heard about the chips to go so many times, and to be fair, I haven't actually heard the lawyers prosecuting young Philly come up with a concrete reason why. I don't even think that she was in shock or anything. The only thing they said is that Auntie was the one encouraging her to go to the police at first when she saw them injuries. So maybe later she realized how wrong it was, is their narrative. So in the moment she was in shock, but still that is pretty ridiculous to ask for chips to go. A state prosecutor told the court young Philly took a young woman by the hand knowing full well he was going to have sex with her, but did not tell her exactly what he wanted or how he wanted it for his own sexual sexual gratification before getting out of her room as soon as he could, the prosecutor Danielle Clark had said. She meant absolutely nothing to him. She argued he simply did not care about the 20-year-old fan he violently raped inside his Perth hotel room. He's an entitled man, and he had very little regard for an impressionable young woman he sexually violated. When you consider the very little time that young Philly spent with her in the VIP section and walking her to the hotel lobby before biting and strangling her, not only did he spend no time with her, he simply just didn't care, she argued. Young Philly said he pretty much enjoyed her company, she had a great personality, but obviously she weren't going to be his girlfriend anytime soon. He is a promiscuous man, he's not in a relationship. Miss Clark argued in her closing statement the rapper knew very little about the woman he's accused of sexually assaulting in his hotel room. Young Philly is not here because he's a rapper with a moderate degree of fame or the fact that he took advantage of the fame to approach her and tell her she was going to go home with him. She said, he is here because what could have been consensual sex quickly escalated into sexual violence and a nightmare for the woman. Everyone has a right to say no. She certainly did not want to engage in the sexual acts with him that involved violence and brutality. Earlier, Young Philly told the court the fan he's accused of doing all this to on his Australian tour never told him to stop or said you're hurting me or pushed him away while they engaged in consensual sex.
And so in her closing remarks, the prosecutor really wanted to draw the jury's attention to who was the most trustworthy on the stand, either the complainant or young Philly.
Yes, she said the complainant was very compelling in her evidence. She said that, even though she was pressed multiple times during cross-examination, her story did not change at all. And when talking about Mr. Barrientos, she said that during cross-examination yesterday, he was evasive and often relied on saying, I don't remember, when being pressed with some questions.
All the articles I read on this, their headline, obviously there's always headlines to get the media attention, says young fan. And that sounds absolutely brutal. I think one thing young Philly's lawyer wanted to get across more than anything, yes, she was younger than him. Yes, there is an age gap here. She's 20 years old and a consenting adult. Young fan makes it seem like he went to a concert and picked out a child to take home. It sounds a lot worse. But there is obviously an age gap and a burden of responsibility on the older person is what the prosecution are going to say. The lawyer said, did you assume because she was a fan who was showing you all this attention, she would just have sex with you? The prosecutor Danielle Clark asked the performer. No, I'd never assumed that, he replied. I invited her to my hotel. That was just an invite. Just an invite. Like I said, my intention was to have sex. But did you tell her that? The prosecutor pressed. No, young Philly said. He said he was not fussed if the woman came back to the hotel. He said he's not fast. Obviously, what happened, they was painting young Philly in this trial mainly of being a sexual predator, trying to put in the jury's head, this could have been your daughter. He was out looking for a girl that night to take home with him regardless. So he wanted to get across. If she didn't want to come back, she didn't have to here. Young Philly said he enjoyed the sexual activity and the woman gave no indication of displeasure or discomfort. She was enjoying it too, he said. She was kissing, she made sexual noises, grunting and moaning in a good way. He told the court he gave the women love bites and some were harder than others. So there's not just one love bite. Typically you will see people give one love bite. There were multiple, some were harder than others. Ms. Clark asked the rapper if he ever discussed the woman's sexual boundaries with her. No, it was consensual sex, he replied. Did you ask what her sexual limitations were, he asked. No, she didn't ask me either, young Philly said. So guys, we're actually not far away now from getting an answer on what's going to happen. Young Philly will be looking at a serious prison time if found guilty. If not, he'll be found not guilty and resume his life. But some damage to his reputation and time out of work will still be there regardless. The defense obviously are now going to conclude their closing statements on Wednesday. So look out for another video tomorrow. The trial continues but is nearly wrapped up. Everyone can have their opinions on social media now, and obviously there was issues about certain things going wrong in this trial. They had to open up a second courtroom because someone of higher profile was involved in the case, but ultimately it's going to boil down to what the jury think. Do I think there's going to be an element of bias because it's in Australia? There has to be, just naturally. People are human and have instincts. You like to think it would be non-biased, but there's going to be a little bit there. So there will be another set of closing statements tomorrow, and we might get a verdict by Friday to find out guilty or not guilty. Could be delayed until next week and then we'll go from there. So look out for more videos on this. It's not over yet.